Hello, this training is about identifying intellectual disability. So we're going to talk through what kind of things you might notice if someone has an intellectual disability and how to ask about intellectual disability. My name is Katie and I'm one of the wild workers on the Listen Up project.
My name is Jane and I'm another wild worker who works on the Listen Up project.
Hi, my name's Christy and I'm a P worker at Wild.
So before we get started today, we'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. So we would like to acknowledge the Turrbal and the Yagara people of Meanjin. They are the traditional owners of the land that we are meeting on today. We would like to pay respects to elders past and present and acknowledge that it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Okay, so how do we define disability? So there's two different models that we're going to be talking a little bit about today. So the first one is the medical model. So this one talks about the person with the disability being a problem and the person with a disability needing to be fixed or cured. And Christy, we were talking about this earlier, and I think we've both got some problems with the medical model, hey?
Yes.
Because you raised that disability can't and doesn't need to be fixed or cured.
No, because you can't fix it.
Yeah.
And it's not us the problem or disability is the problem. It's the people who's causing us the problem.
Yes. Yeah. And that sort of takes us over to the social model, which talks about exactly what Christy has said. It is not the person with the disability who is the problem. It is the way our environment and our services are set up, but also the way that people think about people who have a disability. That is the problem. Disability is a very normal part of life, and we all have a responsibility to make things more accessible for people who have a disability. It shouldn't be up to the person who has a disability to make things more accessible for themselves. So we have made a video on the Listen Up project a couple of years ago. So this one's all around identifying intellectual disability. So what we've done is we've had a number of the experts that we've been working with defining their disability in their own words. So we'd like you to take some time now to watch the video. You can find it on And You Think You're the Expert website. Take some time, watch the video, and then come back because we've got some questions that we'd like you to have a think about. Okay, so you're back. So after watching the video, what did you notice about how the women described their disability in the video? What type of words did they use? Was there anything surprising about the video that you wouldn't have expected or that you wouldn't have thought?
So take the pause now. So what kind of things did you notice about how the women described their disability? I think when we show this video in training, a lot of the times people are surprised on how many different ways people describe their disability. The thing that I really notice is just about nobody uses the term intellectual disability. I know you don't like that term, Christy.
No, I don't use disability. I just say out what I say and what I've got, this brain damage when I was a baby.
So you'll notice everyone in that video used another word. That was slow learner. There was other descriptions. Some people even said depression first as their disability. So we use intellectual disability because that's what the literature uses, that's what services use, but it's absolutely not the words that people with intellectual disability actually use. So please keep that in mind when we're talking about this today, that we're using this for ease, but it's actually not how people would like to describe their disability. The other thing that people often notice is the way people present, which is not how they anticipated. Often we have this really particular image of what someone with intellectual disability looks like. And I know, Christy, you talk about this a lot. A lot of people think they can tell who has a disability and who doesn't.
you can't tell. It's very hard to tell with most people. Some you can and some you can't.
Yeah, so not everyone has particular facial indicators that would say that they have an intellectual disability, which is what most people assume. I particularly like one of the experts saying that they hide their disability with big words.
Yeah.
So it's not always obvious.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about DSM-5 medical definition of intellectual disability. So this talks about intellectual impairment. So to assess whether someone has an intellectual impairment, intellectual disability, the psychologist will be looking at intellectual functioning, which is measured in the person's IQ, but also their adaptive functioning. So there's 3 different domains that are assessed: the conceptual, social, and practical. So again, it's not just about IQ, it's around the way the person gets on in the world. So Christy's going to talk us through the different domains now. So these are some examples of the different things that will be assessed when the person is finding out if they have an intellectual disability. So there's lots of stuff here, Christy. But we were talking about this the other day, and you were sort of saying that everyone's different. It's not everyone's going to have trouble with all of this stuff.
No, there's like most stuff I can do. I can be at work on time.
Yeah.
I can plan and I remember stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have problems with reading and writing and spelling.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it, isn't it? Not some people might have trouble with 2 or 3 of these. Some people might have trouble with all of these. So it's really important not to make assumptions around the things that somebody might need support with. So some people, if we're looking at the conceptual domain, some people might have trouble with humor or sarcasm. Christy, you do not have trouble with this. You are very humorous and funny.
24/7.
24/7. Absolutely. Some people have trouble with abstract thinking. So they're things that anything that you can't see and touch is abstract, really. Some people, if we're looking at the social, the middle one here, some people have difficulty making and keeping friendships.
Yeah.
Masking is a big one too. And so that's when a person might pretend that they understand something when they don't really understand. Why do you think people would do this, Christy?
What do you mean?
So why might someone pretend that they understand something when they really don't?
Because they're too scared to speak up and say something, because they're worried they're going to get picked on or teased. And that's why half the time when you say something to us, we just say, yeah, we understand, but half the time we don't.
Yeah, yep. So in that case, there might be people with intellectual disabilities going to services, and the worker is saying a lot of hard words, and the person's just saying they understand because they're worried that the worker might think of them or how they might be treated if they admit or if they say, I don't understand that. Some people might have difficulty with communication skills, with empathy, with compliance. So perhaps going along with things or saying yes to things, again, out of that fear around what people will say. They say no to something. Some people have difficulty with schedules and routines. So again, all of this is going to be very different for every different person who has an intellectual disability. So how might you tell someone has an intellectual disability? So Christy's already shared it can be very hard to tell. But some things that you might notice is that the person might have low concentration, might go off topic, have a hard time remembering things, or have some difficulty problem solving or deciding on what's most important. So Christy, these are some things that the worker might notice if they're working with someone and they have a disability.
Yes, or the police in there fiddling with stuff
Yep.
too.
Yep, that could be another, that's right, that could be another way to tell. Yep. Some other ways that you might tell if someone has an intellectual disability. So a gap between their words and their actions. So again, the example here is saying that they understand but not understanding. And again, having difficulty with abstract thinking. So law, rights, feelings, safety. These can be hard words for some people. Hey, Christy.
Yes, especially with half the words we haven't heard before.
Yeah, that's right. If somebody's never heard the word before and nobody's explained it to them,
Yeah.
that's going to be really difficult for that person to understand what you're saying. Yep. So some other ways might be the person might have difficulty answering questions, or they might need a bit longer to answer questions. They might need some time. They might have difficulty responding or explaining things, difficulty in making themselves understood. Sometimes people have difficulty with following instructions, Christy.
Yes, some do and some don't, and especially with questions, because you can ask us a question and we could give you the wrong answer, but that's the way we think.
Yeah. So if someone hasn't understood the question, might mean that they're giving an answer that might not be the answer the other person's expecting.
Yeah, because some people with disability, they see the question you ask a different way too.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. So other ways that you might tell, some people with the intellectual disability might get the pension.
Yeah.
What's another way that they might?
They might went to a special school,
Yep.
special class
Yep.
at school.
Yeah.
Or they might be attending to a work training program.
Yep. Absolutely. So they might attend a respite service or go to an activity during the day. They might be involved with lots of different services or live in supported accommodation. They might even have support hours or support workers. But again, just going back to that, everyone's different. Not everyone with a disability is going to have these things.
No, not everyone. Like I don't at the moment, because I do everything for myself, because I like doing everything myself.
Yeah.
And there's some people do have all that stuff and have help.
Yeah.
It's okay to have help.
Absolutely. Yep.
So again, we want you to pause here to have a think about this question of how do you ask about disability? So we've kind of gone through the ways that you might notice. So if you're noticing some of those things are coming up, people are easily distracted, often late for appointments, your questions don't often land the way you think they're going to land. How might you ask about disability? So have a pause, have a think, maybe even write down how that feels to ask about disability. What kind of feelings come up? Is there a sense of comfort, discomfort? Maybe what's that about? So when we're talking about asking about disability, we often bring this to training we do around Brisbane and surrounds. And often workers express discomfort of how to ask about disability, often thinking that it would be rude to ask too directly, or that using a different word to disability, things like differently able, things like that. Because people thinking that asking, do you have a disability, would be seen as quite rude or quite intrusive in someone's life or too personal. Do you add to that, Jane?
Yeah, I think what we're learning and what people have told us is that asking someone about if you feel someone has an intellectual disability is the best way to find out more about that person. And in fact, they're having a disability is a normal part of life. And so therefore, by asking about disability and trying to learn more is actually quite a respectful way to learn more about how you can best support this person.
And I know, Christy, you go on about this all the time, saying just ask.
Yeah.
Yes, because half the time they don't ask us. And if they don't ask us, they don't know how to help us. And there's no shame to ask us. We will tell you, but just keep in mind, just talk to us and just think about it and say it in the right way.
Yeah, exactly. So thinking about asking the right way is kind of what we're getting on next, isn't it, Christy?
Yeah.
So if you think someone has an intellectual disability, it's best to ask the person. Explaining why you're asking, though, can be one of the most helpful things. So how does it benefit that person for them for you to know about their disability? What's the benefit? So when we spoke to people in the Listen Up project and we asked them about this, how should workers ask? People said, I would have tell people if I know it's going to help me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are worried about telling people about their disability because they're worried they're going to get picked on. I know, Christy, you talk about this a lot.
Yes, that's half the time why we're all people with disability don't say anything, because we're worried we're going to get picked on or don't believe us. And half the time we don't get asked, have you got disability so you can help us?
Yeah. So, for example, with the police, nearly everyone who was in the group who'd had that experience said, I would have told the police I had a disability sooner or at all if I knew that meant I could access the 93A interview, the interview that makes it easier to report. Similarly, particularly if you're in police or a child safety or another position where people might be a bit nervous, it's really important for you to name this isn't to bring you down or to single you out. It's so that I can change the way I work with you, or I can offer something better. For any other worker, it's, I can change the way I communicate. I can make sure that I'm doing things that work for you. That's why I want to know. It's not because I'm nosy, and it's not because I'm going to put you down.
No.
Yeah. So people explaining why it's good for people to share means you're more likely that someone's going to answer honestly. So as you said before, we can sometimes feel uncomfortable to ask directly about a person's disability or support needs, but this is usually rooted in ableism. So seeing disability is a bad thing rather than a normal part of life. And the more that we ask about disability and see it as a normal, everyday question, and the same way we ask about name and age, the more it becomes just a normal, everyday part of life. Because it is a normal, everyday part of life, isn't it, Christy?
Yes, it is every day, and I don't let my disability stop me to do anything.
So people may not answer, I have an intellectual disability. So like we said before, and you were saying before, Christy, lots of people don't like that word and they wouldn't use that word. What kind of things might they say instead?
Well, because the reason we don't like that word, because of me, I don't like that word because I don't see people as disability. I don't look at them like they got disability. I just look at them like a normal people. A normal person.
So that's stigma attached to that word.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. So people might say, I have trouble with reading and writing, I'm a slow learner, or I have a disability but won't be able to say the type. Regardless of how people answer it, though, it's important to find out how their disability works for them. So asking about someone's disability and them answering, I have an intellectual disability, actually doesn't tell you much more. So like Jane and Christy was talking about at the beginning, everyone's disability works really differently, doesn't it, Christy?
Yes, everyone's different. Like for me, I can't read or write or spell.
Yeah. So it's really important to go through some of that with people and go, can you tell me more about it? What kind of things are you good at? What kind of things do you find hard? I know you talk about that, Christy, a lot. That don't just ask what I'm bad at.
Ask what you're good at. Then that way you're not actually asking them what they're bad at, or you ask them what they got disability. Because if you ask them what they're good at, then you can work it out from there, because then that way you're not actually putting them down.
Yeah. So focusing only on what do you find hard can be a way of putting someone down.
Yeah.
And then what can I do to make things easier to understand? Or I want to make sure I'm making things easy to understand for you. Can we talk about some ways to make it easier? is there anyone I can talk to about your disability to find out more about it? So for some people, this conversation might be quite tricky, but they might have someone in their life who's a safe person who knows a lot of this information that they'd be happy for you to talk to about it.
And some people haven't got anyone for someone to talk to about it.
Absolutely. So it's not a guarantee that that person's going to be available. So I know you talk about this one a lot, Christy. That if you're noticing someone's not understanding, you could say, just to make sure we have the same understanding, you know, can you explain it back to me in your own words?
Yes, because half the time when someone explains something to me, we all say yes. When we don't understand it, we just say yes because we didn't know what to say, or we didn't know if we should say we didn't understand because we didn't know we were going to get picked on or put down or pushed back or told us we can't help you.
Absolutely. And similar to that thing, those things we were talking before, you know, do you mind me asking if you get Centrelink? What kind of payment? Do you mind me asking who you live with? Do they help you? You know, things like that. Other questions you could ask is, where did you go to school? Who do you talk to when you need help? So that might be identifying that person who might be able to help you understand a bit more about their life. And do you get help from any services or workers, and what do they help with?
And that's the questions they can ask people too, because they'll give roughly idea if they got disability too.
Yeah, so it gives you a better idea of what's going on in their life, and more about what kind of support they have as well. So observe people's body language, not just what they're saying, because like Christy said, a lot of people have really bad experiences, so they might not feel like they can be honest with you just yet until you've built up that relationship.
And build that trust.
Yeah, I know you talk a lot about trust.
Yes, a lot.
Yeah, because that trust can be really hard to build when you've had such bad experiences.
Yes, it does. It takes time. We've got to get to know you first and build trust with you first before we can say anything to you.
Absolutely. So it's also important to document this. So especially if you're in an organization where that person might speak to someone else next. So note the person's disability in their own words. So if they don't use intellectual disability, don't write down intellectual disability. So if they say slow learner, note that that's what they describe their disability as. Make it clear this is how they prefer to talk about their disability. And if they've told you they have a formal diagnosis, so some people will say, you know, the doctor said I have, you could note that down as well. Note any other information you have on what they find helpful and their accessibility needs, and things they find easy and things they find hard. Is there anything else people should make sure that they remember, Christy?
And another thing, some people might not find the forms and that, and they got disability because it's been a long time. It could be gone too. So,
absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point, Christy. Very few people do actually have formal diagnosis forms.
Yeah.
Or it was diagnosed way back when they were children and they don't actually have those forms and they're no longer very relevant.
Yeah.
So I think there is a bit of a myth that most people have a formal diagnosis when most people actually don't.
yes.
Yeah. Really good point. So that's all from us today. Thank you so much for watching. And if you do have any more questions about that or some help working out how to work with someone, feel free to call Wild and we can talk to you more on the phone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.